Good evening, YouTube, and welcome back once again to the EdWord. I am your host, Ghostface, and I welcome you back to another Scream episode here on Eddie's channel, where I will be doing my recap and review for the latest episode of Scream in the Trenches. Now, before I go on, as usual, as you all know regarding these review videos, that this will be full of big spoilers. And in this most recent episode, really juicy, big, wowza spoilers. So if you are not caught up on Scream, or you haven't seen the most recent episode, do not continue watching or listening to this video, as I will be going into great gory detail as to what went down in this week's episode. That being said, whew, it was a good one. You know, I think this episode, as Eddie and I were discussing, this was the real cat and mouse episode. You know, this was the episode that made you go, huh, what's happening? Huh? Who's behind that door? Who's behind that door? Who's around the corner? Who's around the corner? Oh, it was a lot of fun. So, the killer took Will hostage, but left Piper alive, probably on purpose, because he wanted Piper to bring Emma back to find Will to torment and toy with her. And she brings along her friends, Noah, who helps her track Will's cell phone, and then Brooke and Jake. And Brooke has openly confronted her father, saying she has seen the footage and knows about the blackmail that was going on between him, Jake, and Will. Oh yes, and Jake has to confess to this at this point, that it wasn't only Will who was trying to blackmail her father, it was both of them. And of course, Brooke is pretty pissed with him about that. You know, this was just another vain attempt for him to get into her pants by lying about other people. And she obviously now knows the truth, and the truth is out that both he and Will were attempting to blackmail the mayor. But when she confronts her father about it, he insists that her mother is in rehab in Arizona, and that's not her in the body bag that he's dragging along in the video, and he says that she doesn't understand what is going on. So it makes you wonder, like, what is he up to? Is he the killer, or does he have his own shady goings-on happening right now during this killing spree in Lakewood? We don't know. But now Brooke knows the truth and confronted her father about it, and now he has a decision to make as to whether or not to tell her the truth or to shut her up as well. But that wasn't the main focus of the episode. The main focus of this episode was to find Will and see if he's still alive or not. So our four main characters are led back to the warehouse with Piper when she shows them what she found when she came to, because she had been unconscious. And it turns out that the killer left a message saying, "No cops, Emma," knowing that Emma would indeed return, and counting on Piper to bring Emma there to that warehouse. Meanwhile, before all this happens, an awkward dinner date is supposed to go down, involving Emma, her mom, the sheriff, and the sheriff's son, the hot new guy who Emma has really taken a liking to, even though she tells her mom, "We're just friends." I don't think friends make out with each other openly in public when they pull up into the school parking lot, Emma. But the four of them are supposed to have like this awkward dinner together, because it's like Emma is seeing the sheriff's son, and the sheriff is seeing Emma's mom. So it's like the wife and daughter are with the son and the father. It's kind of weird when you put it in those terms, but that's kind of what's going on here. In fact, you know, Emma kind of jokingly referred to it as a Brady Bunch situation with Kiernan. But you know, when Emma receives this threatening phone call from the killer challenging her to come find Will, that's when she, you know, asks Kiernan to cover for her. That's when she goes to Noah, and when she asks where Audrey is taking the midterms that she missed since she was temporarily in police custody in the last episode, being interrogated about Rachel's death, but thanks to Emma, she's in the clear and exonerated. So she's taking the midterms to make up for what she lost, and now Emma and Noah are on Will's trail, and Brooke and Jake are gonna help them. You know, this whole episode, I kept getting this increasingly eerie feeling about Jake. Like, he is a creep, but is he enough of a creep to be a killer? Is he the killer, or is he one of two killers? Maybe it's two people. Also noticeably absent from this episode, Mr. Branson, the teacher, who has a substitute in class during this whole time, which Noah points out. And so now Mr. Branson has gone missing. What's happened? And now the malware that he had installed to spy on his students has also been taken down. So what's going on with this English lit teacher? We don't know. He's never seen in this episode, only mentioned. So our four characters make it back to the warehouse. They find the message left for Emma by the killer, and they all decide to go after him and go after Will. And thanks to Noah, who tracks Will's cell phone, they track him to this abandoned bowling alley out in the countryside, a little ways outside of town. And of course, as you shouldn't do in horror movies, which Noah, of course, points out, is that you should never say, let's split up, or you go that way, and I'll go that way. What Eddie and I love about this show is how they are constantly poking fun at themselves and making fun of their own genre, or their whole premise. And Noah, the film geek, of course, is the perfect guy to do that. He's like, okay, because even Jake says, let's split up. And Noah's like, okay, said no one who ever survived a horror movie ever. It was great fun. And of course, during this whole episode, it's like each boy pairs off with a girl, Emma and Noah, and then Jake and Brooke, while they try to work on their relationship. Brooke, who's pretty pissed at Jake about lying to her, about not being involved in the blackmailing of her father, and trying to pin it all on Will. Jake trying to defend himself, but at the same time, almost simultaneously, but they cut back and forth, Jake and Noah are trying to pin this on the other. Noah comes up with some pretty good points as to why Jake could be behind this, as he's explained to Emma, and then it cuts back to Brooke and Jake, where Jake is attempting to explain to Brooke why Noah could be behind this, and they both come up with some pretty damn good reasons and theories. It makes you wonder and scratch your head like, could they be right about one? But could one be right about the other? Or is one trying to cover his own trail? We don't know. Fortunately, they find Will. He's strung up, but he's badly wounded. He has a knife wound right underneath the heart. So, there's some, so the killer kept him alive long enough to be found. But right as Noah and Emma find Will, Brooke gets scared. Actually, Brooke is separated from Jake when Jake goes to use the restroom, and as she's waiting for him, she's spooked by the killer. The killer suddenly appears. Now, could it be Jake in the costume? Yes. Could he be the killer or one of the two killers? If there are two killers, it's possible. But then again, maybe Jake was really subdued by the killer, and the killer started to go after Brooke. Brooke finds her friends, and then they temporarily fight off the killer, who tries to reach through the doorway with a knife, making stabbing motions, but Will holds him off. Will holds him off as the others get away, but then Emma refuses to leave Will, even though she's angry with him. In spite of their recent breakup, she cares enough about him to go to his aid when his life is in danger. So very admirable of you, Emma. Meanwhile, she's asked Kiernan to provide cover for her as to why she hasn't made the awkward dinner date yet. And when Audrey tries to call Noah, telling Noah that, hey, I'm done with my midterms, let's go get some coffee. Noah briefly mentions an abandoned bowling alley, but the cell phone reception is so bad in the place, it cuts him off, and Audrey can't hear the rest of his phone call. So when Audrey goes to Emma's house and sees the sheriff, Emma's mom, and Kiernan, and Kiernan and Audrey kind of have to spill the beans that Emma and the others are off trying to find Will, who was attacked by the killer. The sheriff immediately rounds up his men, and they all go out there to the old abandoned bowling alley. And meanwhile, while they're trying to outrun the killer, Brooke comes upon a very injured Jake, who, like Will, has had a knife wound just below the heart where it's non-fatal. What a coincidence! Or did Jake do that to himself, or did the killer really do that to cause doubt on poor Jake? We don't know. Because, like I said, the whereabouts of Mr. Branson in this episode are completely unknown, along with Kiernan's movements as well. Sure, he's in the house when he's covering for Emma, but at the same time, he could very well be involved. So eventually the cops show up after their main characters manage to avoid the killer. But, right as the cops show up, that's when the killer suddenly disappears, and the deputies start swarming the place. They bring Will out to the medics, and, the deputies look all over the place, and they're like, no, he's not here, there's nobody here. And then even Noah references and makes fun of the whole tearful, joyful reunion montage, where all of the couples are together, and everybody's reunited, and a nice little happy song's playing, la 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 la, and there's only a few minutes left of the episode, and you're thinking to yourselves, wow, really? Because it seems like they were teasing this whole week that this was going to be a gory episode featuring a major character death, yet nothing's happened. Yet. And so finally, after it's all said and done, Kieran and Emma have kind of like a couples talk where Kieran points out how she probably still has feelings for Will, but she needs time with this. He agrees, so he agrees to leave her alone, and then she decides to go visit Will, who's recuperating in his house, and, after verifying that it's him on the phone when she's talking to him, she gets some snacks so she can go watch a movie with him and his mom while he's all bandaged up and whatnot. But when she gets to his house, the phone rings again, and it sounds like a distorted version of Will's voice, but it turns out to be yours truly. Well, actually not me, but my TV counterpart, who's doing a bang-up job, by the way. So whoever you are, good work, and I'm really enjoying your stuff. And of course the killer is saying, you'd better hurry, Emma. He's running out of time. And then when he says, oh, this was so creepy, when he says, I'm not going to kill him, you are. And she's running towards Will, and what's behind him? One of those, I wish I knew the name of it, but it's one of those gigantic chainsaw things that you see at construction sites. It's like one of those. It's like one of those tractors, but instead of instead of one of the shovel blades, it's got like the enormous chainsaw thing to it. And sure enough, she trips a wire when she runs toward Will to unbind him from his chair as he's gagged and bound. He's like, no, no. She trips the wire. And, of course, it kills him. Now, unfortunately, we don't see it, but his blood just splatters all over Emma. Oh, that was gross, and really, really last minute. Like, literally last minute. This was like the closing scene of this episode. It was really last minute and quite good. So, overall, this was a fun episode, but it did raise a lot of doubts concerning two characters with me and Eddie. Jake and Mr. Branson. Now, a friend of mine, well, actually a friend of Eddie's, had an interesting theory how it could be the mayor, since the mayor was roughly the same age as Emma's mom. Perhaps he's the one who's behind all this, and he indeed is the killer, and maybe he keeps making references to Brandon James and Emma's mom because he was there 20 years ago. I mean, he's old enough, so why not? And that was a very interesting theory that Eddie's friend had come up with, and when Eddie told me, I kind of agreed with him. Oh, and of course, speaking of Brandon James, before I forget, Emma finding a weird number carved into Will's back. It says B4, and she realizes it's another clue in this cat and mouse game she's playing with the killer. She goes into the bowling alley and she finds a little shelf that's labeled B4. She opens it up, and it's a cassette tape. And whose little cubby hole is it? Brandon James. And she puts the two and two together. This is where Brandon James